Hello everybody, this is International Master Atanu and you are watching Life is Chess. From today we are starting a new series on attacking the king. I believe most of you will be excited about this topic because the ultimate aim of a chess game is to checkmate the opponent's king. And at some point or the other, we have to attack the opponent king, otherwise we can never checkmate it. In today's game, we are going to see a performance of one of the great Russian chess players, Mikhail Chigorin, who defeated the reigning world champion of that time, Wilhelm Steinitz, in 1892. This game was a part of a world championship match in which Wilhelm Steinitz defeated Mikhail Chigorin narrowly and managed to retain his world champion title. But Chigorin in this game played a very instructive game, and let us see how he manages to attack the opponent king. We reach this position after 12th move by black, and the 12th move, as you can see, was knight to h6. Look at this position. Before starting to think, as usual, we would survey the position and try to find out the specialities of this position. White has a classical pawn center and control of the 4 squares where black's pieces cannot come. But white is also 1 pawn down in this position. So white had sacrificed a pawn to reach this position. He has control over the center, and the black king is still in the center. As a result, the rooks are still not connected. So the rooks are still out of action, and it will take at least one move for it to join action. It's white to move, and let us see how Mikhail Chigorin conducts attack against the opponent king. Chigorin played the first move, knight c4. He attacks the bishop on a5. So before black being able to castle, he has to defend the bishop. And then once again he played a4. So once again he is threatening to trap the bishop by playing a5. Black had to defend. He played c6. After the game, some analysts, they criticized this move and suggested the move a6 instead. But even in that case, white can take this bishop, and after the recapture, this pawn is pretty weak. It is an isolated pawn. It cannot be defended by one of its colleagues. And of course, white can pressurize the pawn later by bishop a3 or even e5, or the knight to c4, and so on. But in the main game, black played c6, which was considered to be slightly weaker than the other move, a6. Now, look at the position carefully. And, well, black once again plans to castle, bring his king to safety, and of course connect the rooks. White played e5, a very instructive move, attacking the weak d6 square. So just recall, the move c6 had actually left this square little vulnerable, and now white tries to exploit that. Black plays d5. It is worth noting that had black defended the pawn by retreating the bishop, white would have simply continued take, and after the exchange, he would have taken control of the diagonal, and after that, the rook would have come to e1, attacking the e7 with the bishop and the rook. This e7 knight is pinned, it cannot move, and of course the king cannot leave it undefended. So that would be a great position for white. Another option was to capture DE5. In that case, white would capture with the D pawn. It's very interesting. Knight E5 could be considered, but D5 is more effective. It leaves the D6 square supported by the pawn on E5. Black takes Queen D1, Rook D1. Even after the exchange of queens, white still has the threat of Knight D6 check and winning, at least getting back the pawn with all advantages. And if black escapes now, still white would play Rook D7, attacking the knight and the pawn. It is double attack. So whenever you are carrying out your strategy, your objective, the objective of attacking the king, keep in mind these small and petty tactics, the tactics of double attack, the tactics of pin, and all those stuff, because these tactics help us in carrying our strategy. So, well, after the move G5, white plays Knight D6 check. Black, the reigning world champion, played King F8 and white played Bishop A3. So look at white's pieces. This knight is a monster knight. The bishop aiming at the diagonal. The king could not castle. But now black tries to castle by hand. He somehow wants to move the king to maybe H7 or G7 in future and bring the rook to play. But it's white to play, and white plays Rook B1. White's idea is to push the pawn on A5, and after removing the bishop, to capture the B7 pawn with the help of the knight. Black plays Knight F5, challenging the monster knight. Well, at the end of the game, after the game, the players came to the conclusion that maybe Knight C8 was a better defense. Even in that case, white would have an undisputed advantage by playing A5, removing the bishop, but then the in-between move, Knight D6, actually removes the attacker of B7, but white can recapture with the pawn, leaving this E5 square to be invaded by the knight. And after black captures the second pawn, black is 2 pawns up, white can play Knight E5, and after the queen retreats, he can keep on his attack. Look at the rooks. They are still moves away from coming into play, and white's pieces are really invading from every direction. So that would be a very, very easy position. We can continue up for a few more moves. After D7, Steinitz, actually he said that Rook B7, a beautiful piece sacrifice, because after black captures the knight, white can recapture, and despite being a piece up, there is little black can do about the pawn advance to E7. So this was one sample variation to show how active white's pieces are, especially the monster knight on D6, which even after removal is replaced by a dangerous passed pawn on D6. Well, coming back to the game, Steinitz played Knight F5. He did not retreat, but he brought out his knight. And remember, removal of this knight facilitates king's escape to H7 so that the rooks can join action. Now white played another very, very instructive and beautiful move. Look at the chessboard carefully, pause the video, think, and then find out what Chigorin played. Well, Chigorin played Knight F7, a brilliant sacrifice, basically removing the king's shelter. After the only move, because the knight otherwise would at least capture the rook and white would be ahead on material. Black takes, and now the main move e6, forking the king and queen. And it's worth checking that queen e6 is not possible because of the obvious check on g5. Well, once again double attack, knight fork. As I said, while pursuing your strategy, one must always keep an eye on tactics. So tactics and strategy, or tactics and positional play, they go hand in hand. Here white played e6. After black took e6, white played knight e5. This move, the move e6, apart from forking the king and queen, has actually vacated the square e5 for the knight. After king a6, white plays knight e5, attacking the queen and also stopping black's retreat. White is one piece down, but black's king has been brought up. Black goes back, and white plays rook e1, threatening a deadly discovered check. White plays king f6. Black plays king f6, and white plays queen h5 with the threat of queen f7 or even knight g4 checkmate. Since the king is in the center and all these pieces, the bishop, the knight, the rook, and even this rook, in case of necessity, can come up and join attack. So all white's pieces are surrounding black's king. Black played g6. He wanted to simply get back to g7 to a safer square. But then white continues bishop e7 check. Well, in case of knight takes e7, white could play queen h4 check, and the king cannot go back because the knight would be lost. And of course, the king would continue to be attacked. So there will be a checkmate coming up soon with the help of knight, queen, and the rooks. So g5 is the only move, after which knight g4 check. This opens the line for the rook attacking the knight. This is the only move, and after queen g5, white threatens queen f6 check as well as the e7 knight. Well, these are long variations, but for great players like Chigorin or any of the players of today's age, it won't be difficult because most of the moves are very natural. Most of the moves are also forcing. So after this position, black did play g6, and after bishop e7, he took with the king, allowing a discovered check with the rook, knight g6, and when the king moved here, white played knight h8, capturing the whole rook and also threatening moves like queen f7. Had black taken queen h8, even now black is ahead on material, but even now the attack continues. White would simply centralize his rook, attacking the knight, and after this, white can remove the knight and subsequently play queen h6 or queen g5 check, attacking the exposed king. So in this position, after knight h8, black, the world champion, played bishop d4, and white brought his last piece into the attack against the king. Black played here, as we can see, any move like queen h8. Now since the rook cannot come to e5, the d4 pawn has been removed. White can still play rook f3, attacking the knight, and after black defends, white can forcibly take the knight by playing g4. Black preferred to play queen d7, and after rook f3, rook h8 and g4. Well, this position is still materially advantageous for black, but still the king is weak. After rook g8, white did not take f5, although this was also good enough to win, but white played queen h6 check. Notice the king cannot go to e file because of the rook on e1. The king has to go back, or rook g6 check in this case. Well, black had to play this move, for which white played rook f5, and well, black, the world champion, resigned, because in case of queen f5, white would play queen f8 check, remove the queen and capture the queen in the next move. Well, after queen, this check, and the king has to escape, but white already has a queen against bishop. So this was a very instructive game, a very great performance from a player who was not a world champion, but he was a challenger to the world championship throne. And what we learned from Mikhail Chigorin is he did not allow black that one move with which the king would have escaped. Instead, he kept on attacking his opponent with threats. And finally, the knight invaded in the position, and he sacrificed his knight to bring out the opponent king. So the lessons for today is, do not allow your opponent king escape if your pieces are aiming at him. I hope you liked my video today. Keep watching Life is Chess.